This is Platemark, a podcast about prints and the printmaking ecosystem. In every episode of Series 3, we'll hear from people who occupy interesting and varied roles in the print ecosystem. I'm your host, Anne Schaefer. I work to promote prints and printmaking through not only this pod, but also by pulling together fine art print fairs across the country and also organizing exhibitions, albeit intermittently. The goal of the pod is to demystify the world of prints and printmaking, which can be technically challenging for people, and to demonstrate the range of opportunities to work in this charming corner of the art world. This is a show that takes you behind the scenes to expose the generous, collaborative, and creative people working to better the world one print at a time. Today's guest is Deb Puretz, who is an artist and outlier. We met each other not too long ago, and we're talking a whole lot about what happens when you are in your retirement, but you have worked the entire time on your artwork, and you really want to make your mark and have the work mean something in the end. Deb emphasizes the importance of connections and perseverance, and also in aiding fellow artists. She touches on the challenges of entering the art world without traditional academic credentials, and also, most importantly and directly about her art, the evolving landscape of computer technology's impact on art. Her prints have to do most centrally with early computer technology and early chip technology, and she uses early prototypes as the matrix in many cases. So even though I said that the reason I wanted to talk to Deb is because she's an outlier and she's navigating the whole issue of how do you get recognized when you don't have representation, she wanted me to remind you that she is in fact looking for gallery representation and obviously to be included in exhibitions and open to working with collaborative printmaking shops and publishers like you people out there listening. I just had to say one other thing. We talked a lot off camera about Jennifer Roberts' interest in circuitry and recorded sound, which we talked about in Jennifer's episode when she was talking about her project with Dario Robleto. And to say that Jennifer gave a talk not too long ago at Yale about printed sound and that kind of thing, and that really felt to Deb like a validation of her work. And she really wanted to send a shout out, a thanks to Jennifer for taking up the topic because it's so rarely covered. Okay, housekeeping. I identify as a cishet white woman, and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. Images have shifted a little bit, people. Usually they're in the show notes, but we have some technical issues with getting the images to stick in there. So what I've done is created a blog post with the images instead, and you will find the link directly to that in the show notes themselves. So there'll be a highlighted link there that says, show me the images. And that's what you click and you'll get the images. Fear not. All right, you could help me keep the lights on here at Platemark by going over to the website and hitting the support and donate button. That would be super helpful. All right, let's get rolling. Deb, it's so wonderful to see you. Thank you for coming on Platemark today.
I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we have some interesting things to get to, but before we do, can you introduce yourself for everybody?
Yes. My name is Deb Puretz. I'm a real Californian, but I'm transplanted now to South Carolina. And I've been working in IT for my career. And I always took the time to go to museums while I was traveling for business and also to then start to work with a printer in Silicon Valley. He was actually in Oakland, but during that whole time I was working in Silicon Valley, I started to work on this. So going back to 87.
Oh, okay. Well, so we met because you reached out to seek advice from me about navigating the art world. And as a person who's in retirement, how does one deal with all of the work that you've done over your career? And now what? Like, how do you get yourself into places and get some recognition? And I thought it would be really interesting to talk to you about how do you go about it as an outlier, and what does that mean, and what does it look like to try and navigate this whole thing?
It's a lot of false starts and stops. I'll start there. The person who told me about Platemark was Leslie Cozy.
Oh.
And she actually saw my work in 2013 when she was at the Hammer, right? At the Hammer, the Grunwald collection down in Los Angeles. And I had an introduction to them because I was in the Achenbach by then. That's up at the Fine Arts Museum in San Francisco through Karen Brewer. So through this, actually, if you follow where I was able to go, it was women that opened doors for me. And
Oh,
so when Leslie saw my work a few years ago, she recognized that it was similar to what she had seen 10 years before that. So then she started to talk with me and told me about you. And yeah,
so for everybody, Leslie is at the Baltimore Museum of Art and sitting in my desk, basically. She took over when I left, and it is the connection point here, which is fascinating, really.
cross country talk about. Yeah.
Right. But I think, I mean, the moral of the story is going to end up being it's all about making connections, right?
I think I know how to make connections because when I was 24, I'd finished my MBA already and I followed a boyfriend out to Hong Kong. And I was following for love, but when I got there and found out that nobody wanted to hire any single woman there, we're talking about when it was still a British colony. People assumed if you came out and you were a girlfriend, you're probably kind of a prostitute, and how are they going to tax you and all that kind of stuff. So then working my way around and trying to find consulting positions around Hong Kong and around Southeast Asia, I learned how to be bold about meeting people that were at a cocktail party or at an event where maybe somebody knew someone and you wanted to be introduced. So I kind of learned how to be both gracious as well as bold about trying to find ways to meet people since I didn't know anybody and I didn't have any British connections. Because nobody would hire me, I started my own company there. It was called Office Automation Asia, and I thought it was incredibly smart because I could write OA squared. And back then, Office Automation was really, really brand new. We're talking about 81, 82. I had real pride that one time I got an envelope to Hong Kong, in Hong Kong, that was addressed to me as Deb Puretz, OAA, Hong Kong. And it came from the Middle East.
Oh,
So I
wow.
thought, wow, that's real recognition. And it's because I used to write an article for Asian Computer Monthly, and that's why my name was in IT people's mind when they opened this up. It was the only English language computer publication at that time. Yeah, that's how I got the name recognition out there. And I had started this small company and I was fairly successful fairly quickly because I was offering something new and nobody else had that kind of a skill set south of Japan. And a lot of people realized that office automation was very important because number one, Hong Kong was a hub, just like Singapore is today, but it was a hub. It had a lot of finances going on. And then the second part of that was it was extremely expensive real estate. It was more than Manhattan or something at the time. And so you didn't want to keep adding more and more support staff. So my idea was very, very timely. I was very fortunate in that. And after I did it for about 3 or 4 years ago, okay, so this is the epitome of working in business, you know. And so I started going to art school and telling everybody that I was at a meeting because who was going to report me, right? It's my little company with 2 or 3 people. And I realized I enjoyed it a lot. And then I realized another principle about business, which was you're supposed to replace yourself so you can do more important things. The one thing you could not replace is being an artist, whether you're a
Oh,
writer or a visual artist or a musician, either it's yours or it's not. Now, this is pre-AI, but this is what was one of my driving reasons. It's like, no matter what you do in business, I don't think it's going to get any better than this. And you like the idea of delegating and teaching and mentoring and letting somebody else do your job. But that's not your job once you become an artist or a writer. So I took the time off to try to learn what I could about watercolors in those days. It was
watercolor.
I
Oh, okay.
wasn't gonna fuss around with anything else in Hong Kong
Huh.
in the humidity.
Huh. And that humidity. Yeah, I always wanted to get to Hong Kong, never got there. Ugh.
It's still there.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, I wanted to get there before it transitioned to Chinese territory. Yeah. Ugh. But so when did printmaking show up?
So in 87, I was looking at ways to learn more about art, but I hadn't decided to leave Hong Kong yet. I was going to stay there another several years. I was really comfortable. And I went off to a class in Urbino in Italy. Urbino is the Renaissance town, which is considered the most beautiful example of a Renaissance architecture. And the castle is still there. They were big in ceramics. It was a fabulous, wonderful experience. And I took a print class there. I wasn't very good at it. I just scratched out a bunch of little things, on copper plates. But I liked it because when you're dealing with paints, I get dirty all over. I'm just really I'm not able to keep my hands clean or my face clean or my clothing clean or anything. But with prints, I was able to manage the process a little bit with a printer. So I had a real aha moment that maybe this was something that could be bigger in my life. Then I went back to San Francisco Art Institute when I moved back to California. And the one class I took in printmaking there was on stone. I mostly majored in painting, but I did take a stone litho class. But I took history of prints with Bob Johnson.
Oh, do tell.
Which part do you want to hear?
Well, it's so unusual. There's so few classes given in the history of prints. I'm always fascinated when people have had the opportunity.
It was Introduction to Prints is the only one that I know that you could take at the Art Institute at that time.
Amazing.
And because I was just fascinated by it, and I had a pretty good art history background from traveling around, and I was 34 years old. So I was a pretty mature student. My questions would have been based on something that I kind of knew a little bit about from art history or from museums, etc. And so I think he didn't particularly like talking to me, but Karen Brewer was very nice to me. Years later, she had that position.
So Bob Johnson, for everybody, was the curator at the Achenbach Foundation and no longer alive, but was well known in the field. And then Karen Brewer, who is just retired not too long ago, maybe 5 years ago, took over that role. But so the class was at the Achenbach using their collection. So you were looking at real objects as you were learning.
Just like a print room.
Yeah.
So we would come over and put on our white gloves and we would just pass the little, everything around on the table.
The thing that happens when you have a class like that and you're able to handle the objects, it's the thing in my mind that might break the logjam or get you over the speed bump of intimidation in terms of museums and study rooms and dealing with the works on paper collection, because people are so intimidated by it. And I feel like if we get you in as a student and you are able to see how it works and, the whole system, like it could be a watershed moment for people.
For me, it was an amazing understanding. An aha moment was that paper is fragile. These had been through wars and fires, and they've been stolen, and they've been rolled up, and they've been unrolled, and it seemed to me to have much less durability than a piece of canvas. So that was why it became very, very precious right away for me.
Yeah, the experiences that we had in the study room at the museum were magical, really. And I wish that experience on everybody, because it's looking is the key to all of this. If you really want to understand prints, you have to look, and not stop. Yeah.
Be close up. Be up close.
And close. That's right.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So you've been making prints since then.
Yeah.
In addition to working in the business tech world. Well, so how did you get your first work into a major collection?
I'm trying to think if it was through Karen Brewer or because I took an independent study with Bonnie Earl Solari. And she was the curator for the Bank of America collection.
Ah.
So I took 3 semesters at Art Institute. And frankly, I never finished it because I already had this MBA and I couldn't see the point of having a second master's degree, which says a lot about how the world has changed, doesn't it? I didn't think I'd ever want to teach art, so it wasn't uppermost in my mind. So I took what I wanted, which was all the studio classes, but some other stuff I didn't take. But I did take an independent study with her. And she gave me as a task to take 150 works that she identified that were in the Bank of America collection and find out what the current market value was.
Oh.
Now, there wasn't another student at Art Institute that could have done that particular assignment, but I knew how to do it, and I knew how to create the report for that and, to show just how successful she was in selecting work that had gained value. Now, of course, this is not what most art students care about, right? I mean, you're taught not to care anything about that. But I already have this background and this acumen from working in Hong Kong. And so I did it, and I did a fairly good job. And we stayed friends for the next 30 years. And she took my art for the Bank of America collection. And then some other places where I think she had introductions, those started to happen with art consultants.
Right. But so let's talk about the work, because there's an interesting link, I think, between your business life and the art itself that I think is the kind of the linchpin on the story.
Yeah. So one day I was over at the beautiful museum, which is in the park, in Lincoln Park, and it belongs to the FAMSF,
The Legion?
Fine Arts Museum. But I'm forgetting exactly which one it is. But it's where the Achenbach is down. The collection's down at the bottom.
Isn't that the Legion of Honor?
You're right. I met Pam Paulson there, and I said, I'd like to just try some copper plate prints. And she cut me 10 6-inch by 6-inch ones. And so what I did is I just etched for the fun of it. And the reason I wanted 6x6 is because my ex-husband was working with a semiconductor company, and they had these prototypes. And when I tried gluing them together, I couldn't get them to stick. So I said, okay, well, maybe I'll try to print with them, because I could tell they had tooth. So she made some square plates for me, and I started to think about inking up these semiconductor plate prototypes. And that's where I started. So I did about 10 different images with her, and we didn't do any runs. They were mostly trials. Then she started to get really busy. All she needed was just a couple of months to get her studio all ready, and then she started to get the artists that she wanted to have those long-term relationships with. But that's how I started with the copper plates at that point. And I hadn't done that. That was in 92, 93. And I hadn't done any copper plates since I'd been in Urbino in 87. And in the interim, I had done a few acrylic glass monoprints and a few other kinds of things like that. But when I saw these plates, these prototypes, these rejects that were being produced with semiconductors, for me, it was the embodiment of something I'd heard in a lecture in Urbino, which was art povera. It means work with what you have. And this is what I had. As I say, I tried to glue them together and make sculpture, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. But if I could have, I would have made sculpture. I had these prototypes, these just really, really early types. And it didn't take long for me to see what semiconductors, i.e. computers, were going to do for us. So I started just really early on with photographs, old documents, because it was at around this time, now I'm moving forward to like 96, 97, the Supreme Court, for the first time, accepted electronic documents.
Oh.
And for me, I'd studied languages, and I thought, this is the end of the word original. The word original will never mean the same thing again when all of them are originals. And so I did a body of work that started with those, and they're old documents that were going to go to court, or they were maybe some of them were legal documents like land grants, and some of them were about banking matters. And then I would put somebody's old photo in there that I got. I loved collecting old photos of people that weren't my own family, but other people's family. And in those days, you could get them very inexpensively at a consignment shop or just a secondhand store.
Oh, right. But wait, back to these semiconductors. Yeah. We're talking, what are they made? They're plastic, right?
Not the prototypes, not when they started them. I actually wanted to show you this. If this
is there one right there? Hey, look at that.
This is bendable. It is some kind of a composite material, Anne, but I don't know exactly what it was, but that was the secret sauce of this company. And so each one of these, there's like 9 squares within a square, and then there's 9 squares on this almost 15-inch. It's my plate, but it wasn't a plate for them. It was a prototype for them to cut these apart and then start to put layers on top of each other. Okay. And we're talking at the time when there were 4 or 8 layers on top of each other to actually make a chip. And now there's hundreds on top of each other, like 212 or something like that. Just lots and lots and lots of them. So that was what I used. That was my original plates. And then after I'd done that for 3 years or so, I asked if I could get the engineering drawings. And once I got the engineering drawings, then I could get them on the copper plate.
Oh, you photo expose them?
So I made them bigger.
Yeah.
I went from 6 inches to 15 inches because these 15-inch ones then went with my other 15-inch prototypes, which I couldn't change. Those were real. And this, I could make any size using photographic process. And so fast forward, that's all I had until 2 years ago. And then I realized that I had been working with like 35 different plates for almost 29 years or something. I go, oh, well, this is getting kind of old. And so I started to ask, well, where could I get some more images? And so this is a solar plate print. This is made not from an original, because the original is too tiny. I mean, it'll fit inside your fingernail, right?
Right.
This is all so tiny now that it is enhanced. It's a digital photo that's been enhanced 1,000 times.
Oh, gosh.
So when you think in terms of 1,000 times, you have to understand that this is not viewable. It's not visible to the human eye. And that's another part of the story. Like, to me, it's, oh, these are all the things that computing's done for our life. But look at what computing did to itself. I mean, it became 1,000 times tinier.
Well, I think scale is really an interesting piece of the story, because the original prototypes that you had were the thing. They weren't representations of the thing. They were
That's
right?
They were
six
either 6 inches or
right.
15 inches. And so I printed with either 6 inches or 15 inches.
I mean, it's like the old floppy disks, like,
Yeah.
Kids, look it up. You were printing directly off of these early plates.
Yeah.
And they held up fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a lot of prints out of them.
Yeah.
They were all scratched because they were rejects. So most of my early works have masking tape or something like that, or glue around the edges, which is not perfect, but that to me was part of the reality of working with the real thing, So when I first started, I was interested in there's these minute things like e-photo. Like, nobody says e-photo anymore. They say digital photos, right? But we still say EVs. And soon nobody will ever need to know that used to be electric and then a hyphen vehicle, right? So I realized that this was a really transitory time, and I could take discrete changes that were happening, e-photos, e-documents. I did another one that was about sheep, Dolly the sheep, because cloning happened that week, or whatever, in the news that I read about. And so I did another work of art that was related to that. And I realized that I was beginning to document how our life was changing with computing. The reason I could see that is because I've been working in it since 1976. So I was open to all of these different ways that it was going to come into our life. I saw it in office automation, but I also, before we had the term Internet of Things, could see how it was also affecting some other things. Now it's happening so rapidly, I can't print fast enough. Right. Then I could take discrete things and pay attention to them. So one of the series that I really liked is that I did about 14 works that are called Before AutoCAD. And that's about the software in particular, a very specific. It's not about a chip that actually did everything, but what was able to be done with that. And I used the images, and in this case, even though I did these over the last 2 years, I frequently used the 6-inch little prototypes that I have, because they're round and they fit right into the dome of a drawing of how you're supposed to make a cathedral dome, because it's a book on classical architecture. Sure. It was published in 1867 or something like that, maybe 73. But a book that I found in Buenos Aires, and it had what I wanted, which was, this is how much geometry you used to have to know before AutoCAD came along. That was a really good example to me of, right. Hey kids that are digital natives, this is the way people had to learn.
I think that's what's so interesting about the era that, this moment in computing and the rise of all of it. That's so interesting, because it went through such a interesting morphing of scale and capability and size. I mean, it was just like this rush of stuff, and to stop and look at it and memorialize that moment, in time, I think is really interesting. And I also love the translation of something that is an object that you can print from, but is something that could be a conveyor of information digitally. Like it's such a weird bridge of materiality, you know?
There's nothing like it before, which is why I'm 71. And for me to learn about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence is it's a bonus that I can understand anything at all. But I just took a class with a bunch of other people my age at an OLLI, which is an Osher Lifelong Learning, and it took place over at Furman University down here. And most of the people that were in the class had been in IT in one way or another. Some people, they never really introduced themselves and said exactly what they did, but you got the feeling that some were IT managers and some were this and some were that. And for me, the most important weeks were the first 3 weeks where I came to understand how it's done, which is with a bunch of numerals, just lots of numerals. It's like when you text and then it assumes what your next word is going to be. And it's like, yeah, 50% right or not right, or, it's something like that. But you multiply this out so fast and so simultaneously. That's what I needed to understand. But the rest of the class, they all wanted to understand how it was going to change our life. That I already knew. I mean, I've been reading Wired magazine since forever. I've been going to Long Now Foundation lectures since forever. This is the kind of reading that I do and that I watch, and that I have a basic enough understanding that I understand where it's going, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's just moving so fast. And now I'm scared of it. I don't want to go to San Francisco and be in a car where you don't have a driver.
Yeah.
And the teacher of this, he's fearless, and he goes, you have to get out there, you may be 70, but you have to really get out there and be in a taxi without a driver.
I can't even let my car, which has the capability of park itself.
This is why we are such well, I don't know about you, but this is why I am a transitional generation. And so I can see this before and after. And what I was really fascinated by is when I started to give some of these to universities, and they said that they were using them because kids would come in and really didn't know. Why did people have all these photos? Why didn't they have, a credit card? Why is it that they kept these little these papers with savings, and this deed, there's only wait a minute, why did you have to have 400 pieces of paper to sell your house? Somebody needs to explain it to them. And this is a visual explanation of what their parents or their grandparents would be telling them.
I'm sure that somewhere there's a curricula that explains that transition, but I feel like it's not widely shared.
I think that the best explanation I got was when somebody, and I don't remember exactly who it was, said, the education curators are bringing classes into the print room, and they could be in law, or they could be in biology, or they could be in some other soft discipline. I'll call it soft as opposed to hard science. And they're having a moment when they can see that the words that are on the pages on their iPad are exactly, I'm showing them to them by metaphor. That if you take this as a metaphor for computing, you can see how this relates to that subject of something changing from paper to digital.
Right. I like paper.
You remember when they told us that we would use a lot less paper? And then all of a sudden we got these printers and papers were all over the floor, and there were 100 copies of everything we did, and we chopped down lots more trees, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
I just, I'm convinced that in the future, no one's going to have the technology to read the chip, but they'll have the piece of paper.
So I listened to a really interesting lecture over the last couple of days. For my dinner company, I have on either Platemark or some other very good lecture by a Long Now speaker. And Benjamin Bratton was talking about if you have 8 billion people in the world, but there are 100 agents, AI agents for all 8 billion people, then that's like 800 billion decisions being made. But only 10% are from people, and the rest are from these agents. And who knows what happens then?
I'm very nervous these days. I don't know how to
make the art about that.
Yeah, right. I know. All right. So back to this idea of existing outside of the system. So what are we talking about when we're talking about the system? How would you describe it?
Well, So, as I mentioned, I was 34 when I went to Art Institute. So, I made friends more with the teachers than I did with the students. And I would always offer a ride from Art Institute downtown San Francisco over to the Legion of Honor. And so I would talk with somebody who was 19 or 20 or 21 on the way over and back and all that. But we didn't have a whole lot in common. And another thing is at that time, it was all about abstract art. There was nothing really about, it was almost impossible to in the painting department to actually do figurative art. You could in the drawing department because we had models, but not in the painting per se. And so then within 4 years of just muffling around with some painting and some small works on just with monotypes, etc., like that, I wasn't in a position to finish my MFA because I became a mom at 38 and then again at 41. So I wasn't going to be going back to school. And what I lost with that was the connection to the academic side of things. So when, for example, I was watching Susan Goldman's Midwest Matrix, that was a real eye-opener for me. I knew nothing about that. Now, some of it's because the colleges around me, like UC Berkeley, etc., that's not what they specialize in. But also that we just really didn't have that big of a printmaking community that I could see. It wasn't that strong of a school within the Art Institute. It's not really a school, excuse me. But the painting and the sculpture were stronger departments. And as I was listening to the relationships of the mentors and the department chairs and the students and how important it was to have open access print shops around them, that was not really something that I saw open to me. And I had the wherewithal at some point, to drive all over the Bay Area, from Sonoma down to San Jose. But one of the things that comes up about the Bay Area is Kala. And Kala wasn't very supportive of me. Kala is an open access community print shop that's over in Oakland. And so it's not attached to a school. It's community oriented. But to get into it, even as a guest, took a lot of work and effort. The director, if she didn't know your work, she didn't really think much.
Oh.
So this brings me back to this other conversation I had. Early on when I first got there, before I had children, I belonged to the Society for the Encouragement of Contemporary Art. And that was an auxiliary of the Museum of Modern Art. And the curator that I knew first through that organization was John Caldwell. And he died suddenly after about 2 years, and his successor was Gary Garros. But one time I was at a lunch at one of these studio visit days that I organized for the society, and I was sitting across from John Caldwell, and something that I asked him made him respond with, well, collectors buy art with their ears. And I said, well, what about curators? And he goes, yep. And I said, so if you never heard of me, you wouldn't want to find out about me. He said, nope, if I hadn't heard of you, then I'd assume that you're probably not very good.
Oh.
So just to get that right, that's about 1990.
Right. I'm sorry, I'm gritting my teeth, people. I mean, I feel like the internet changed all that, don't you?
No, I think the Me Too changed all that.
Ah, okay.
I think all the pressure to say, if you want to be a cellist in an orchestra, we're going to put you behind a screen and we're going to do this blind. We're not going to look at who you are and what you look like and how old you are and whether you're cute or not, because I had enough of those comments directed my way in San Francisco. So I imagine it was going on around the country too.
He said that?
Yeah.
I mean, the system is so, because if I, as a curator in a museum, if I sat across from you at a studio day or something, and I was intrigued enough by your story to come do a studio visit and really liked your work and pitched you, that could catapult you in a way. And I mean, I think there's probably a lot of curators who are like, yes, I have the power to do this thing. But for me, it's just like, you make interesting work and I want to showcase it. Not, my intentions aren't quite as lofty. I just would like to share, you know, and I might be, I might be.
I'm trying to think if I ever had a studio visit in all the years that I was in California with my little home studio behind the garage in Redwood City, California. I don't think I did. I think that I had a few works that I was able to take with me and go and bring them to some art consultants. And I took it to their office in my portfolios. And then I had one woman who was down at the design center, and she put my work into hospitality and into healthcare facilities, et cetera. She placed a lot of my work. But it's not the same kind of a recommendation as the head of your department, of the print department, mentioning to Crown Point Press or Gemini GEL, they might want to have a look at your work. So when I was listening to your interview with, is it St. Marie?
Chris Santa Maria.
St. Maria? Boy, was that an eye-opener.
Yeah.
And the thing that I heard was, well, yeah, since every one of our pieces goes always, one of our artists' works always is accepted at the National Art Gallery to fill out their portfolio,
the archive,
their collection.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's the easy way to do it. That's how you get it done when you're 25, not when you're 68,
Yeah.
And I had missed all of that. I had missed all those introductions. So anyhow, I'm down here now in upstate South Carolina, and there are a lot of SCAD graduates. So that is Savannah College of Art and Design.
Yes.
They have a pretty strong network between here and I think over into Tennessee, down to Florida, to Georgia, certainly. And they help each other a lot, and they stay connected. I didn't have that from the Art Institute.
Do you think it was... Why do you think that is?
I think because I didn't do an MFA. I think
you didn't finish.
That was the difference.
Oh.
From completing a print. That showed seriousness. And the way I did it, what didn't show seriousness?
You were a hobbyist.
I was already 35. Why do I have to start like when I'm 22?
That's always it's so irritating. It's so, yeah. Sorry. My words are gone, people. I'm sorry. I'm just getting over the flu. But it's just there's such a prejudice against age. It's insane.
I'm trying to say a lot of it's about gender too.
Oh, for sure.
I'll just fast forward for you that in around 2002, I started a company because everybody was doing it in Silicon Valley. And I happened to have a good idea. I had good connections, and I eventually got a patent. But what I want to say here is that I used to go to all of these investor presentations where you're listening to the people that are in the news now, people that have investment firms, talking about how interested they are in, really great hotshot ideas. And I was sitting in an audience, probably in Stanford, listening to some goat up on stage say, I'd rather have a 21-year-old guy that's not married and doesn't have a lot of relationships than anybody that's older and married and has to be home for dinner. Because the young guys, I know that I can get them to work about 18 hours a day. Anyhow, something he said was very deliberate about how he'd much rather have footloose men, young men, than women who were in committed relationships. And embedded in there has to be, or men in embedded relationships, in important relationships. But I wanted to stomp out of there. I was so furious. I just couldn't believe he actually said that in that day and age, whatever that was, 2002, 3, 4.
Yeah. That's a think it, don't say it kind of a thing.
Right. So I took the long way around to a lot of different things. I think that I persevered because I already had a background that was a little bit business-like and said, sometimes you have to only get 3% of the proposals you make. So figure that out. You have to keep going, and you're going to get rejected. And I never minded being rejected, Anne. I minded being ignored. Because if somebody says, I don't like your work, it's just not my cup of tea, that is so clear, and I don't have to keep writing to you or emailing to you or sending you slides as in the old days.
Right.
It's being ignored that really gnaws away, I think, at your soul. So the things that I remember are the women that came to my aid, really. And that Marjorie Cohn over at Harvard, when I asked her if she would like to have two of my works as a gift. She said, no, artists should be paid.
Go, Jerry.
Out of all the universities that I'm in, she's the only one that's ever said, no, I insist that you be paid.
Well, it might say something about the funds they have at the museum. Because, I'm sure that we've talked about this somewhere on the pod, but when you have a museum that collects across time, space, type of object, whatever, and you're sharing the money, and there's a pot that's dedicated to contemporary, that means that the contemporary person who's buying video, sculpture, painting, performance, whatever, also, is sharing with the people who are buying prints for about 1/10 of the cost. And so if you have a sympathetic chief curator who's interested in prints, you probably are going to be okay. But if not, all that, that $10,000 or $5,000 needs to be sat upon and waited until it amasses enough to buy a large painting, So there's always this push-pull of who gets to spend the money.
So that reminded me of something else, because I definitely understand that. And I'm very happy with my prints being in museums, even if they paid a penny or less. One time, Bonnie Earl Solari, who was this art curator at Bank of America for many years, asked me, well, what's your strategy here? What is it you want to gain? Do you want to have a lot of exhibitions, or do you want to be in permanent collections? And I didn't even wait a nanosecond to answer. I want to be in permanent collections, because that to me was really just with, going right back to Robert Johnson's class. These were preserved, these were conserved, these were taken care of, even though they're fragile. Yeah, that's where I want to be, not running around to all of these exhibitions where something gets chipped and you have to replace the paper on the back of the frame, all of that kind of stuff. She told me, well, those are different strategies. You've got to play this differently then. And so after that, I spent less time going around to these temporary art exhibits that would be in corporations where the art consultant got paid well, but the artists rarely did, and they weren't often picked up. And it just seemed like it was gamed against the artist. And similarly, when I was young and probably not a very good painter, I was submitting my works to competitions and, spending the $25 or whatever it was. And then occasionally, like 1 out of 15 or 25 times, maybe I'd get in. And then I would pay the postage or FedEx or whatever over and back to some other state. A lot of it, if I look at it through a business lens, is just really not very supportive to artists, right? For many, many reasons. That helped drive my career goals in art.
Yeah, that makes sense. The only problem with it is that it's so easy to have something come into a collection and be used in classroom situations and visiting scholars or whatever, but not getting on the wall, which then means that your name doesn't get out there quite in the same way as it would if it was hanging in an exhibition in the museum on the wall,
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So I'm taking the long-term view. I mean, okay. I don't think I got this piece of advice from Bonnie, but I just say, well, maybe 50 years from now, this will be important. Why would it be important? I can't tell you exactly. But every time my work is in a group exhibition, I am absolutely delighted. And it meant a lot to me to be included in the Library of Congress collection, because I understood that was a place where an enterprising curatorial graduate student somewhere might someday do a study. And so what I did is I made it really easy. Again, probably because of my background in business, but I put together 3 boxes with all of the paper documents that are going to be totally irrelevant in another 25 years. But the conferences that I spoke at and the articles that I wrote and where I was on a panel, etc. And all of these paper-based things. I mean, my life is paper. And as it definitely was while I was in IT and trying to create a consulting business. And so with all of that, if somebody wants to do a study on me, I made it really easy for them. They've got everything they need in 3 boxes.
That's good, because there are a lot of artists who never get around to organizing their papers until they're gone. Well, they never do it.
Well, or their legacy, because it's not going to be papers anymore. But yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think planning for legacy is hard. I think it's really hard, but I think you've done the right thing. It's a useful exercise for sure.
Even if it never gets anywhere, it organized me.
Yeah.
It definitely did, to the point where now that I have all these little pieces of paper here, there, and everywhere around the house, and I'm trying to get them into 7 binders of what's left, I'm still thinking, maybe it's worthwhile for me to try to figure out how to get an archivist. Last year, I was trying to apply for several residencies, and all of the image lists have to be different. One is with your name, one's without your name, one's with a hyphen, one's with a comma, whatever. And so I was just having a really difficult time with all the multiples of the same image, all having a different name everywhere all over my computer. I have a feeling that people that are in their 20s and 30s don't have that problem, but I have that problem where I have multiples everywhere.
Oh, I do too.
Okay. I think that's an age thing. That's
I think it's an age thing. For sure. Everybody needs something in a different format. You're absolutely right. And then what are you supposed to do? Just delete them all? I don't know. Somebody's going to need it someday.
Well, and also it's worth having a good record, right? This is what I submitted here, and this is what I submitted the following year when I wasn't accepted, and here's for the third year when it's different.
Right.
But yeah, they all have different names when you go to 5 different residencies in one. When you apply to 5 different residencies in the same year, there'll be the same 5 images with 5 different names of the slide or the image. Yeah.
Oh God. Oy. All right. So what else do we need to talk about in terms of being the outsider and getting your work where you want it?
I think you have to have a really thick skin, really thick skin, because if your mentor's not doing that work for you, or if you don't have a mentor, you have to face all of that. And I think that that's daunting. And that's how a lot of people end up doing something else, because they studied art in college and they gave up too soon. So I think having a 5-year plan and then working it backwards to what you can do in 1 year. And, does this move you ahead or does it keep you in the same place? I think all of that's really important. And then the second thing is to help everybody else along the way. And I'm really, really appreciative to all the people that helped me along the way, with no thought to, is this person going to be a really good person for me to recommend? I mean, they just let me stand on my own. They let the work stand on its own, and they let my email or my letter stand on its own. And they didn't worry about whether it reflected back on them, whether that person that they introduced me to would like my art or not. Right. That's really what all of us need, I think. And I'd be happy to do that for anybody I know. And my colleagues down here, I haven't met anybody who's ambitious in the way that I was for a relationship with museums. But I've offered to them that if there was anybody that was on the website and I could make an introduction for them, I would do that. And I'm talking about my colleagues in, let's say, the print collective. Nobody took me up on it.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's not that people don't understand how it works, right?
I think it might be.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
they didn't go to a business school before they went to art school.
Yeah, but making connections is the basis of everything. I mean, what do they say about getting a job? 95% of people get jobs through people they know. Nobody gets a job through Indeed, ever.
Actually, it's not even the person you know. It's 3 degrees of separation, right?
Right.
It's not the person you know, but somebody they know.
Right.
But I don't think artists are those kinds of people.
I guess.
And I don't know that they really do. You talk to more of them than I do across the nation, so you probably have a better idea about that.
I know, but this is going to be added on my list of things I ask everybody, because
I think most people are shy to do it. Most people don't really want to hear somebody say, well, no. I joined the APS, right? The Print Society, or is that Print Scholars, and I found people there to be extremely nice. Just very, very nice and helpful wherever I've reached out to anybody.
Yeah.
And that's the part of your print cooperative or your print ecosystem, which to me is really quite lovely. Now, I'm not relevant to 90% of them that are not interested in contemporary art, so our paths might not cross at all. Speaking of which, I'm hoping to meet some of them at the Baltimore Print Sorry, the
Hey.
Brooklyn Print
And the
Fair.
Brooklyn Print Fair. Yeah.
But those are the kinds of people that are not competitive, it seems to me. And
Hmm.
sometimes artists think that it's competitive when it may not be at all.
Huh. It's fascinating to me. I feel like the place that it can all be formed in a young artist's brain is in college when, in addition to the classes you take, there is this effort to take people to the museum to introduce them to the curator. Or because I remember a lot of the students that came through the BMA's print collection. I mean, I have a print right behind me from one of those students, and also to promote them taking, summer jobs at a print shop so that they learn who all those people are, wherever they end up. Or like there's the connectivity thing is so critical
That's,
beyond just what you're learning in the classroom. I
yeah.
think it's
Well, there wasn't a lot of that going on at Art Institute back then either.
yeah,
But what
doesn't
I
sound
will
like it.
say is that you have like 175 episodes, right?
Yeah. Do I? Jesus.
I think I added them up. I don't remember. But anyhow, you have 175 episodes. And in that, you preach this. You really do talk about how this is a very amenable, agreeable group of people, and you can reach out to everybody, et cetera, et cetera. But you're only still touching, 10% of all of the students that are going through a
Oh, sure.
less than ideal
Yeah.
education and then maybe first or second job, and they're not actually being taken along. And
Right.
they may not have a boss who, at least like I did, thought if I teach everything to all the people that work for me, then I can just go to more art classes, So they're not actually around people who want to replace themselves. But that to me is a big part of how you mentor people.
Yes, I agree. I think we're on the same page there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always giving ideas away. Like, here, take this one, do this. I'm too busy.
I think that Platemark is like a masterclass in printing.
Oh,
I'm getting such a good education from it. And I don't really hone in on the ones that are the kind of printing that I'm never going to do.
oh, sure.
Like, I don't see myself becoming a woodcutter
Yeah,
and probably not linoleum either. But
yeah.
all the other kinds of things, I think, possibly, and I just really enjoy what I'm learning that I missed by not getting an MFA and really in print.
Well, and every program has its limitations too, right?
I'm
Yeah.
not the best person to ask.
Well, right.
I only went to one.
I mean, I don't have an MFA either. Yeah. I mean, there's so much to learn, and there's so many people who are willing to help you learn it. And I think I've sometimes I feel like I'm a Pollyanna. I'm like, just everybody.
Well, when you say there's so many people that are helping you, people's heart is in the right place more than likely, but they say to themselves, "Oh, I'll get back to that email," and then they don't.
Sure. Well, I'm
Which is
guilty
why
of
I
that. Like,
nag.
yeah, I have to say that I don't mind being nagged because even if I like pin it to the top of my thing, I'll look at it and go, oh, that I can do that tomorrow. And then suddenly it's 6 months later and I get an email from Deb going, hey, you said you would, oh crap, I forgot.
I did take it personally.
Oh, sorry.
Get to know me. What does she know about me that I don't know?
It's just, there's a lot of balls in the air right now. Yeah. I think my wish for everybody is to be open-hearted and open-minded about creativity and forget ageism and genderism and all that stupid stuff, racism. I mean, people are creating because they feel compelled to create, and everybody has a point of view, and they're all worth listening to. So get off your asses and do it.
There you go. Well, what I'd say is there are many ways to get there.
Sure.
There isn't only one way to get there.
Right.
And if I had believed that since I didn't finish that Art Institute MFA, that I wouldn't get anywhere in art, which I know a lot of people thought when they saw my work, because I know from my rejection levels that they thought, like, why would I bother to collect this? But I think that, it pushes all of that responsibility back on the artist, and that's really where it belongs anyhow, right? I mean, we're not all Picasso, and we aren't all born with a paintbrush in our mouth, and everything we do is perfect, and we have to like struggle to keep doing something new that isn't really a failure, isn't
Right.
really not moving forward, maybe moving sideways in a way that's uninteresting.
I wish there was a better system for seeking feedback, not critique necessarily, but I guess that's where the studio visit comes in. I follow somebody on Instagram and I forget the woman's name, but she's promoting these workbooks that she's put together about how to, write the right email to a person to come give you the studio visit because it's critical. And I agree. But I'm really open to studio. Like, I want to know who's out there doing what. Like, so, bring it. I'll
It
do
may be
it,
in a minority. It may be just
I guess.
because otherwise, people who left their museum position wouldn't have necessarily started a podcast which invites in everybody
Well,
from all
true.
sides.
I'm a unicorn, I guess. I don't know.
Yes, you are.
I just want everybody to do good work. Oh, Deb, I don't know. It's hard.
Well, I feel like I'm kind of aging out. I still have most of my marbles. I can finish most of my sentences. Yes, I forget what I went in the kitchen for, but I would really like to be invited as an artist to speak about how to set your own personal goals and how to follow through with them, even though you don't have all the right connections.
Have we done that today? Is that what we were trying to do?
Oh, I wanted to be invited to somebody's university art program for a lecture.
Okay. Well, podcast should do the trick.
Because I think that people think there's only one way to get there.
Okay.
And then maybe they give up and they stop looking for that.
Well, how do you keep going? Like, what's the motivate? How do you get your motivation mojo back?
I think you have to have a really strong persona, and you have to just say, well, they did, if I don't hear from them, it might be that they don't like my art and they don't really want to come out and say that, and just keep moving on. I had this list of the 35 best art museums at universities, and that's where I started with my list. I made a list and tried to work my way through that.
In terms of reaching out and saying,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I've been ignored by many, 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 many city museums. So I don't have a good enough list for that, or whatever that might be. But those I have not found to be as open-minded as university art museums. And that fits part of my idea about legacy is not just to be on the wall, but actually that people look at my plates. I've offered my plates to a lot of places with the idea that everybody can define how they want to make their plates, and that's part of the technology that's available to them.
Well, maybe people will be intrigued by the works that we put on our show notes that are reflective of you and your passion, and maybe some connections will be made.
That would be great.
It would be great. I like to connect people. That's my secret sauce, connecting people.
Well, there you are. Finally, it comes out. No wonder you want everybody else to be friendly like you are.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not that hard. Do it. Although, back to the young students and how I feel like people like you and me can be mentors to young people like that. And part of my coaching is always to work hard at getting over your fear of interacting with people, and particularly public speaking, and being able to speak about your own work and your passions and your manifesto, as you say. I feel like if you can get over that speed bump, then you are 75% of the way there,
I think we were not taught that at Art Institute. There was no class on that, so but that goes back 30 years. And I think things have become progressively more difficult for everybody since COVID and since being at home. And people are generally still cocooning, I think, and preferring not to go out there. But I always remember that I had a boyfriend way back when, and he was learning how to be a stockbroker, and they had to make 100 phone calls before they could go to lunch. And 97 of them were going to be no's, and 3% of them were going to be yes. And people in business toss around 3% for all kinds of different reasons. 3% will start their own company, and 3% will be I don't know, crazy or whatever. But, you have to just go through all 97 of those other experiences in order to get to the 3 that matter. And so whenever I did, let's just say that somebody introduced me to Margie Cohn, then I maybe went back and talked with her or talked with Roberta Waddell at the public library and said, do you know anybody else? And then somehow I got to the Flint Institute of the Arts. I don't think Flint has ever put my work on display that I know of in the last 25 years. But I'm still content with it for now.
Well, yeah.
Someday it might be useful.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of multiple shows where it would make sense to have your work in the storytelling. It'll happen. All right. Any last thoughts for our folks today before we wrap it up?
No, just to tell you that I really enjoyed a lot of the people that I met through your show.
Oh, good.
There were some that were they had all kinds of different kinds of things that come out on your show. Like one of the ladies that I think is really from Australia or lives in Australia or goes back and forth. And she said to put the art into the golf bags.
Yes, Jenny. Yeah.
So I immediately asked some golfer friends, oh, can I have your bag, please? And they go, no, you don't. You can have my bag, but they don't actually let you all fly them for free. Not the airlines that I take.
Oh, is that right?
Anyhow, whatever it is, even if those kinds of things come out during the interview, there are just funny things like that. And some of the things that Art Wiggers said were very funny to me. And the lady that I just listened to recently, there was one lady, I forgot her name right now, but she goes back and forth to Venice. I had to turn it off because I was so envious of her life.
Oh, Amy, yeah. Amy Worthen.
I thought, this is the life I wanted to have. This is the life I was meant to have. And I got feeling sorry for myself. I had to just leave it for a while and come back to it. And then the other lady that does work on fabric or on fiber, and she's gone to India. And
Teresa.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
These are all fabulous people to me. So thank you so much.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's been really fun. Yeah. I recently tallied up, I tried to categorize the interviews so that when you go to the search for the episodes, you can search by artist or curator or, art historian or whatever. And I had always thought that I had way more printer types on than I had artists. But in fact, my artists list is longer than any of them, which I felt pretty good about because that's,
so much.
It all revolves around you guys, the artist.
Well, there are more of us, aren't there?
Yes, apparently. Yeah. All right, Deb. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I hope our conversation is useful for people to think through how they're going to attack the getting of their work out there, and hopefully they'll reach out to us if they have any questions.
That would be great. And I'll see you up in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
You'll know it's my goal to talk to as many people as I can that come from differing perspectives, centering around the art world and specifically the prints and printmaking ecosystem. I think it was a useful conversation to have with Deb about how do you navigate around the structures that are in place that you don't really have easy access to if you're not in the system. And I feel like there's always good information in, well, all of the episodes, but this one in particular if you're having a hard time breaking in. Thanks to Deb for being a great guest. Thank you, Deb. And also, as usual, my thank yous go to Dan Fury of Extension Audio for being my sound guy. Thanks, Dan. And to Uncle Michael Diamond for the use of his original music. Also one to Lee Turner and Skip Barnhart for the soundscapes that I run at the top and bottom of each episode. Images are over in the blog post connected through the show notes. There's a link in the show notes to the post with the images. I promise they're there. And also, there's a support and donate button you can hit for me. Also, I added a listener survey recently, so hit that one and answer a couple questions for me. It'll help me direct the future of the pod. All right, we'll see you next time.